now call the July 13th, 2021 Plan Commission to order. Roll call, please.
Anna here.
Sullivan here.
Grillo here.
Lorick here. Kavich here. Guzikowski here.
Oldani here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Thank you all. If you'd all take a look at the minutes of June 22nd, 2021. And when you are satisfied they're in order and there's no errors, corrections, or questions, motion, please.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of June 20th, 2021 meeting.
Guzikowski will second, except that was June 22nd?
Thank you.
22nd, yes.
You said 20th.
I thought 22nd, then 2021.
Came out as the 20th.
Oh, sorry.
Guzikowski will second for the 22nd.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Hanna, please.
Anna, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye. Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And that will get us to significant common council actions. There were none. Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal actions. There were none. And then our quarterly Parks, Recreation, Forestry Commission actions. There were none. So we're going to move right along into old business, item 7A. This is a review of a request for the temporary permit submitted by Charles DeWitt over at Jim Dandy's for an outdoor series event, temporary event space, shipping container bar, elevated patio, all the stuff we went over. And Carrie, I'm just going to let you, Lori, I'm going to let you do a synopsis.
We throw you off every time.
I even wrote it down. That's how bad it's getting.
So, like you just said, that this was discussed on the the June 22nd meeting, and the proposal was placed on hold by Plan Commission with the hopes that the owner would go and meet with the neighborhood and try to discover what would be an appropriate number of events, and also to discuss with staff issues with the shipping container, event space, and stage. Unfortunately, we didn't get all that accomplished during this time, and so the applicant is requesting the item to be held to the next meeting, July 27, 2021, so that we can get those items taken care of with the neighborhood and staff.
Great, thank you for that explanation. So our action here would be to hold till the 27th as instructed. So we will take that motion. For those of you out there, I know everybody's looking at me and you took time out. Sorry about that. We have to officially go through this. So we just can't communicate anything out because the council may disagree with the action as it is. So, and not the council, commission. So anyways, motion.
Seifert moves to hold item 7A.
Oracle second.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye. Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye. Anna, aye.
Great. Thank you all for coming. If you want to hang out, feel free. If not, we will probably see you on the 27th. And again, if you have any suggestions, contact the alderman or myself. Thank you. That will get us to item 8, and that is a rezone planned unit development. It's to review a request submitted by Dave Decker Properties to rezone to RM1 multifamily residential and establish planned unit development on the properties at 8100, 8146 South 27th Street, and 8100 South Orchard Way. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request for a rezone of the 3 properties with a planned unit development overlay in anticipation of a multifamily residential development on the properties. Plan commissioners may recall that there were several reviews that went through the process and were approved for these properties, beginning with a comprehensive plan amendment back in August of 2019. And then this year, an official map amendment, a right-of-way vacation, and a certified survey map. The certified survey map essentially combined and reconfigured those properties based on the relocated public extension of Orchard Way that was affected by the official map amendment and the right-of-way vacation. That CSM, by the way, is pending. It will be recorded very soon. On the screen right now is the concept development plan for the multifamily residential plan unit development. You will see that there is a public roadway extension for Orchard Way terminating in a cul-de-sac at the northern property line. The continuation west to 27th Street will be private, and there are a proposed number of buildings, 10 in total, for 218 residences. The buildings that are highlighted in red are 44-unit buildings. The buildings that are highlighted in yellow are 8-unit buildings. The one blue building is a 10-unit townhome style building. The two green are 6 units, and the single purple is a 4-unit. The orange is the clubhouse and adjacent pool to the west. The blue arrow is indicating the proposed location of a monument sign that is within a median and will also be required to obtain utility permission for being located in an easement. We'll continue to talk about that later on. I mentioned that there is a certified survey map that was done for these properties. Lot 1 will contain the majority of the development, actually. It will have the 3 buildings with 44 units, the 3 red. The 2 buildings with the 8 units, 1 building of 10, 1 building of 6, and the clubhouse with the pool. The remainder, which is separated by Orchard Way, the 3 buildings are 44, excuse me, a 44-unit building, a 4-unit building, and a 6-unit building. The stormwater infrastructure and the public right-of-way and the public infrastructure will be part of a phase of this development, phase 1. You'll note that there is some surface parking. The 4, excuse me, the 4 red buildings will have underground parking, 44 stalls each. The remainder of the buildings will have attached garages. There will be a total of 84 garage stalls. 173 surface parking stalls are available. That does not include a couple of parking stalls for the mailboxes. And then there are 56 on-street parking stalls that are on the private road extension. The minimum requirement for this kind of a development would be 401 based on unit count and bedrooms. And it appears from the surface stalls, garages, and the underground parking that this development would exceed that requirement. You'll also note that these are in kind of an arc. That is to position the roadway infrastructure and the buildings such that they go around a very significant wetland that crosses over the southern property line into the next property. There are additional wetlands on the property, some of which will be impacted and will require DNR approval, and I believe some of those permits have actually been issued. The stormwater infrastructure is on the northeast corner. The 7.6 acre significant wetland on the south is also indicated with a 10-foot protective buffer. That 10-foot protective buffer is essentially for drainage purposes, but it also requires the setback to be a little bit farther. So you'll note that none of the pavement or the buildings are in that protective buffer. There are a number of deviations that have been requested. The deviations are from section 17. So we'll go through these because they are something that the Plan Commission should consider one by one. The maximum height as required by code for multifamily residential buildings is 50 feet in 3 habitable stories. Due to some topography and the way that the buildings are proposed in terms of the underground parking structure and then the floors above, the A buildings, those 44-unit buildings, are proposed to be 56 feet in height at its tallest. The clubhouse, which is considered an accessory structure, would normally be limited to 17 feet in height. However, the request is for a portion of it to reach up to 36 feet, 5 inches. And when we get to the concept images for the architecture of those buildings, you'll understand why the request is for that height as opposed to something smaller. In terms of front and street setback requirements, what we are looking at is to the public roadway, so the extension of Orchard Way, not the extension of the private roadway to the west that would connect to 27th Street. Code requires a minimum of 30 feet, and several of the buildings will be a bit closer. The closest setback would be for one of the C buildings, and that building would be no less than a little over 10 feet from the right-of-way. That doesn't mean it's from the edge of the roadway. That means it's the edge of the right-of-way. There was also a request for the monument sign to be larger and taller than what is allowed by code. All residential signage is limited to a maximum height of 6 feet and 48 square feet per side. The request is 8 feet in height and 96 square feet per side. Unfortunately, staff have not been provided with any concepts for these, so we're unable to determine whether or not there are any concerns raised with this other than the potential for the location in a utility easement. We're waiting for the utility to provide their input on that as well. Because we don't have all the information, staff does not support the request for the increase in the monument sign at this time. And then finally, per code, we do have a requirement for 65% of any elevation for any multifamily residential building to be constructed with glass, brick, and decorative masonry. As we'll see in the concept elevations, there are a number of proposed building materials for all of these buildings. Cement board siding, also known as fiber cement, we've seen before. The Plan Commission has considered that for other multifamily residential buildings in conjunction with masonry products and glass, and that has been acceptable in the past. However, there are significant portions of these buildings that are also proposed to have vinyl siding, and some have metal roof elements. Metal roofs are not actually explicitly mentioned as being allowed in the code for multifamily residential buildings, and vinyl siding is not allowed as an acceptable exterior primary building material either. Staff have met with the applicant several times and have expressed these concerns and have asked a couple of times for the vinyl siding to be removed and replaced with something that meets code requirements. And unfortunately, we have not received anything that has removed that vinyl siding. So staff is not in support of the vinyl siding as proposed, and this will be a significant discussion point for the Plan Commission. Before we get into the elevations, there's just one portion that will be discussed a little bit later, and that is the phasing plan. Note that there will be 3 phases proposed, and we'll talk about what the time frame is for that. The clubhouse, as you see here, has several roof peaks and several different dimensions to it. This is one of the reasons why the 36 feet, 5-inch height request has been submitted. When I say view from 27th Street, the clubhouse is kind of at an angle, so it's not quite in parallel to 27th Street, but you'll get an idea of what the clubhouse looks like as you're going down 27th Street. The view from the interior private road, you'll see that's the entry point, the main entry point for the clubhouse. The view from the rear, that actually overlooks part of the wetland area, and the side is actually facing the first A building on its east. This is the front elevation for all of the A buildings, so all of the 44 unit buildings, and you'll note that the darker red color that is appearing on the screen, that's vinyl. The peaks that show kind of that gray or brown color, that's also vinyl panel. The fiber cement has been identified as the 2 white areas, and there is decorative masonry at certain portions of the base. The oranger color is on the corners, and at the center, that's brick. Again, showing you the sides of these buildings and the rear. The B1 building is the 10-unit townhouse style building. The materials are the same. You'll see that the garages are on the back side. These are concept elevations for the C1 and C2 building. You will see that there is a portion that still has standing seam metal roof. We did request and did receive that the majority of the roof be architectural shingles. However, again, this is a consideration for the Plan Commission whether or not that portion of the building should incorporate that metal roof when it's not listed in code. The C3 and C4 buildings, there's 6 units, similar to the C1 and C2. And finally, C5, and this is the 4-unit building. Phasing plan here before you. Phase 1 incorporates, again, the public infrastructure, the stormwater infrastructure, and 3 of the buildings and the clubhouse. The anticipated phase 2 is that area in pink, which includes one of the 44-unit buildings, one of the 8-unit buildings, the 2 6-unit buildings, and the 4-unit building. And then finally, phase 3 has the remaining 2 44-unit buildings. It is not uncommon for plan unit developments to be proposed to be constructed in phases. We've seen this before. 3 phases is not necessarily something that we typically see. It's usually 2 phases, but that's not a concerning point. The concerning issue is more along the lines of timing. In code, the typical requirement to start is within 12 months of the date of the approval ordinance. So a building permit has to be issued within 12 months. And we typically have, for these phased developments, a requirement for phase 1 to be permitted and start construction within a certain time frame, and then phase 2 to go through the same process. So that while we have a staggered construction period, we are still moving forward with the construction of the entire PUD. And recognizing that building permits can be valid for up to 2 years, that can push this out quite a bit. The request has been for starting the PUD and hopefully substantially completing it within 48 months. It's a little bit longer than what we typically see, which is 18 to 36 months in other PUDs that we've approved. So if the Plan Commission is comfortable with that 48-month time frame, staff will be proposing benchmarks and certain time frames for these phases to be both permitted, under construction, and completed with occupancy permits in the conditions and restrictions. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. At this time, the applicant, would you like to say a few words?
Yes.
Yeah, please, come on up.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Dave Decker with Decker Properties, and I am the lead developer on the Oaks at 8100. And I think I'm supposed to give you my address, aren't I?
Please,
So maybe you don't
name and
care.
address for the record.
Yeah, Dave Decker, and it's 250 North Sunny Slope Road in Brookfield. And mostly, I just wanted to express my enthusiasm to have this opportunity to be a part of the Oak Creek community. We're very excited, and I really appreciate the efforts that we've had, both from our design staff, Excel Engineering, and JLA Architects, but also the Oak Creek planning staff. I think that there's a couple of points of confusion regarding exterior building materials, but I think that those are actually fairly easily resolved. But really, I wanted to make sure I was making myself available to answer any questions that you might have. But also, I wanted to quickly share kind of the story of how this development all got started. Very early on, our attorney, Alan Markovitz, who I think that many of you know or have met, but he's been here many times, Alan Markovitz suggested that we take a look at an apartment development in Mequon called Spur 16. And we did that. I toured the development inside and out. JLA Architects took a close look at that. And what I really appreciate is even the Oak Creek planning staff made a field trip, if you will, driving up to Mequon to look at this apartment development. And we all kind of agreed that, hey, this is really a sharp development. This is something that would fit in nicely in Oak Creek. So Spur 16 in Mequon kind of became the benchmark for what we were trying to achieve here at the Oaks at 8100 in Oak Creek. And I really feel like, and again, I appreciate the collaborative process that we have enjoyed with our design team and the planning staff, because I think that what started out as a benchmark has really become a jumping off point where we have even exceeded this benchmark or this development in Mequon that we were trying to use as kind of a design template. I think we've exceeded it in so many ways. For example, there's a lot of attributes in our development that you just don't ordinarily see in multifamily development. For example, the townhouses that we were just discussing a moment ago, they actually have a 3-car attached garage parking capacity. And all of our grade level garages are all 2-car garages. There's not a single 1-car garage on the site. In fact, of the 218 apartments that we have proposed, only 22 of them require you to negotiate stairs. So the rest of them are either first level, grade level apartments, or they're accessible by an elevator. And that's going to be so important, both the parking capacity, the storage capacity that people would have, for example, in the 3-car garage capacity. That's going to be so important when we're targeting our target demographic, which is baby boomers, renters by choice. So again, appreciate all the effort that's gone into this, and I feel very comfortable asking for your enthusiastic thumbs up for the Oaks at 8100. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Decker. I don't think we have any residents that want to express anything. If there are, I think that's all your team there. We'll go to the commission. Commissioner Hanna, you want to start us out? Anything?
Sure. I actually have a couple of questions for you. I think you need to be by the microphone.
Yeah, you'll have to be up at the podium to answer, sir.
So number one, what is the reason for the height differential from the codes?
I'm gonna defer. I think that part of it is with the clubhouse. Do we start counting the height of the building from? It's actually like an exposed basement.
Correct.
Right. So, do you want to join me, Eric?
The one with the graph.
This is Eric Drazkowski with Excel Engineering, 100 Camelot Drive, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. The height differential is 44 feet from the roadway in front of it, okay? And it's got an exposed back. And so we took the distance from the back of the building to get to the 56 feet. So that's how we get to the 56 feet. This site was challenging in the sense that it drops 40 feet from the northwest corner down to the wetland. So we had to make those steps with the building, and the way we did that was with this building and this exposed back to act as the retaining wall, and then we could use that for the underground parking as well. So I hope that helps clarify that.
Kind of, but I'll move on. Number two is the materials. Why are we using the material that is not approved by codes? Siding, I should say.
I think there's a little bit of confusion. I know reservations were expressed about the metal roofing. We actually thought the metal roofing was an upgrade, but if people don't like it, out it goes. So I thought we had articulated that we were taking that out, and maybe there's a miscommunication there, and I apologize for that confusion. In regards to the vinyl siding, I thought we were told that some of the, what were they called, design highlights or something like that. I do believe that the areas in red were, there's some.
The dark. Yeah, sorry. Jerry Wick with JLA Architects. The dark red is the portion of the buildings that you're seeing in dark red. There's actually, I don't think, any on the clubhouse, if I remember correctly. We removed it all.
I think you're incorrect. I think the clubhouse sports quite a bit of vinyl, if I remember. Unless I'm looking at the wrong building.
So when we were originally approached by staff and asked to reduce that, I thought that, and maybe there was a miscommunication in it getting to staff, but we had taken a look at redoing those numbers, and that was something that had been worked on last week. I thought it had gotten to staff, and that was where the standing seam had been removed as well. The portions of the building that we're trying to hit with vinyl siding are anywhere from 10 to 15%. They were reduced down from the original numbers to try to get to a less substantial amount of vinyl on the building. And then at that point, we reduced the standing seam. So sorry about that confusion, but we'll work with staff on that if that's a concern.
Just staff, I'm sorry, Christine.
No, Gary said
Yeah.
something.
So the plans that we received, the elevations that we received, removed most of the metal roof, but not all of it. I'm not sure if that was just a holdover. As far as the materials are concerned, we did get the materials percentages breakdown, but it is 65% of any elevation must be brick, glass, or decorative masonry per code. So that's why we asked for each elevation breakdown for the materials. The fiber cement is a 3/4 majority approval requirement for Plan Commission approval, and that's not necessarily considered a masonry product per code. So that's why it was requested to be listed separately from the rest of the materials. And anywhere where the vinyl siding exceeds, well, actually anywhere where there's vinyl siding, that doesn't meet code.
Anywhere it means vinyl siding doesn't meet code, but then on the flip side, if we consider cement board a masonry product and brick, it has to be 65% or glass, correct?
Correct, but the vinyl siding is still not an approved exterior building material per code.
Okay.
So that's what we were asking for, was for your approval to use vinyl siding and then include the cement board siding in the 65% masonry products.
Well, my question to you is, why not? Why not removing it?
Why not?
Removing the vinyl, like per code? Why you want to maintain that?
Our feeling is that vinyl siding is a very appropriate material in this use. Working with the developer, it was something that they had thought they would like to use on the project, and at our latest elevations, it was just an accent material. It wasn't a majority of the building covered with it.
How is the life expectancy and maintenance work with the vinyl out exteriors?
Lifetime.
In my experience, 60 years.
I'm sorry, did you hear that?
Yes, I did, but he said you have to come and speak on the microphone.
Oh, in my experience, 60 years, we had proposed to put vinyl where you wouldn't be able to walk up to it and touch it, be high in the buildings. And, you know, all these building materials progress with time. It's kind of not your father's vinyl siding, right? So I do this for a living. I have to walk up to buildings and say, hey, what did they make that out of? I need to walk up to the building material and touch it to know, is that LP Smart Side or fiberboard cement or vinyl siding? It really has come a long way. So I would step back for a moment and say, you know, let's look at the picture. Let's look at the picture of what we have here. This is, in my opinion, a beautiful building. It has a lot of architectural flair, and I guess we could come in with a brick barn, but this has a lot of architectural detail to it. I'm proud of what we have here.
Okay. One last question. Why 4 years for the staggering of the phases?
You know, there are so many supply chain bottlenecks right now with construction. We've seen, 9 months to get appliances, just you name it. Everything is bottlenecked. And I really don't anticipate that it's necessarily going to take 48 months. But certainly in this environment that we're seeing, it's better to build in more time, be a hero and finish early than, run into problems, have to come back for permissions. Additionally, we wanted to build in enough time to where we don't need to come back to another board, ask for more permissions. We'd like to just, build ourselves in a cushion so that we don't have a problem.
Conservative side. Okay, question for you, Carrie. I know that there is another subdivision near this one, correct?
Not a subdivision, but there are Colonial Woods condominiums, which is immediately south of this parcel, and then south of that is the Seasons at Orchard Hills plan unit development, which is the multifamily residential development that was most recently approved in that area. Neither of those incorporate vinyl siding.
That's going to be my question. Number 2 is the colors and the architect on the outside. They're not smooth between all of them. This is a little bit darker than what's out there.
Well, I mean, that's not something that we typically regulate, and it does distinguish it between the developments. So that's not the concerning point. The concerning point is the materials. Again, multifamily residential buildings, we don't have any that have been approved that incorporate vinyl siding. And it's been a plan commission discretionary item for approval of fiber cement as per code. So again, all of the developments in this area would be brick, masonry, fiber cement, stone, those kinds of materials. Further south, we're talking about older condominiums that were constructed in the 90s and early 2000s. The building materials in the code right now that are the exterior materials that we constantly reference as being approvable, those were established in 2008. So anything prior to 2008 is not actually, comparable because that was under a different code section. So we have to apply what's in code right now. And the only time that we allow for vinyl siding is for single-family residential because that's not a regulation for Plan Commission review. So that's where you see most of the vinyl siding is in the single-family realm. Anything else, for the most part, possibly duplexes aside, is in the Plan Commission realm, and therefore the building materials per code would be applied.
Thank you. That's all what I have.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Matt?
Commissioner Hanna asked all my questions, so I guess the only comment I have would be if vinyl siding is being considered, what's the percentage that would be considered an accent? I mean, I'm looking through here, seeing anywhere from 30 to 40 some percent. I guess as a commission, if we even considered it, what would we consider an acceptable percentage to be considered accent? That's just a thought that I had. So if there's a consideration, we should, kind of try to, work with planning and that to make sure that if we did choose that, we would make it some kind of benchmark to hit, so to speak.
Commissioner Sullivan, I can say that per code, the acceptable building materials that could be approved as accent comprises no more than 25% of the elevation on which it's placed.
Thank you.
And it's usually things like ephes or stucco or, things of that nature.
I mean, if it was going to be considered, I'm not saying we should consider it. I'm just saying if it was, we should, the benchmark should be 25 or less. If we're looking at comparable, allowable accent in a zoning and code. Yeah. That is it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Commissioner Carollo.
Would you entertain further comments?
Oh, sure, come on up. Yeah, it's
I'm kind of surprised that the vinyl siding is, such a stumbling point. We proposed it as it's frankly, number one, I think it's an excellent material. It's not the vinyl siding that maybe you're thinking of. I'm not embarrassed that we proposed it. If it's a stumbling block, we'll take it out. My goodness. But let's look at the environment that we're in. So ironically, one of our design team members is building a house in Fond du Lac, and one of our design team members in Excel Engineering just got their costs back for building a single family home in Fond du Lac, $260 a square foot. It doesn't get you anything special. That's not granite countertops. That's not ceramic. But that's the environment that we're living in right now. And so we try to be a little bit of cost discipline in some of the vinyl accent areas. These are you can't touch these. Obviously, you can see them, but that's why we were proposing it. I'm not embarrassed that we had proposed it, but my goodness, if it's really a stumbling block, we'll certainly have to take it out, as the metal roofing as well, which we thought was an upgrade, a nice design element. If that's objectionable, asphalt shingles are cheaper. We'll put those in. I mean, we were really trying our best to introduce some flair and some architectural detail.
I have faith in his body. They usually consider it and digest it pretty well, and confer pretty well with staff, and they have good ears. So we'll leave it up to them. Doug?
Thank you. Dave, and I appreciate your willingness to acknowledge that there might be some lack of consensus about the vinyl siding. But when we had our meeting, and this is, I'm terrible with time and dates, but several months ago, when we said that vinyl siding was a stumbling block, you said, I think I heard those exact same words from you. If vinyl siding is a stumbling block, we'll take it out. And it never happened. So that's kind of where we are today. So I hope you can appreciate that we would like to see probably more of an empirical standard as far as what constitutes an accent material, because I mean, you know, at our urging to reduce the vinyl siding, it just never happened.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Where was I at? Dawn?
So understand where we're coming from as well. You know, the plans that I have in front of me are calling for, you know, some of the places 71% of the vinyl siding. So I have a hard time approving this if we don't really have the real specifics in front of us. As well as if it's not even, you know, if it's by code not an acceptable material, then it might look great on this building, but we're going to get, you know, Oak Creek is growing and we sit in front of, you know, drawings like this every other week. And if we approve it for one, then we're going to open up that we might approve it for all the buildings that come after this. So, you know, working with the materials, but if vinyl is not acceptable, then I believe that we can't have it. Unless, you know, I'm not sure what the other commissioners think, but starting at that, you know, starting at that point, those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. Alderman Lark?
So I can, I guess, just echo what everybody else is questioning and saying. Coming at this from an alderman standpoint and representing the residents, I can honestly say that most residents, if not all of them I speak to, are not overly excited about more apartments coming in. I myself, it doesn't bother me at all. And I can articulate that to most residents why they're coming. There's a demand for them, obviously. People aren't just building apartments for them not to be filled. There's demand there. The difficulty lies in having variances that we're approving in order to get more apartments. It'd be much easier to sell this to the residents if it meets code in every aspect and there's not a single variance that we're approving here. The heights, I can get around the heights. I understand that it's some of the grading and the below ground parking and things like that that cause the heights to be elevated. So I'm not too concerned about that. Obviously the vinyl siding has been spoken about. So it'd be great to see that gone or at least reduced to the absolute minimum. The residential sign, I'm not too concerned about. I don't know if there's any way to reduce that to get it within code so there's not a variance on the sign. It looks like you're looking for two extra feet.
2 extra feet in height, but double the square footage.
Right, okay. So I don't know if there's a way to still make that visible from 27th Street and reducing that a little bit. And then the setbacks, I'm assuming just because of the large area of wetlands and trying to get density to make this feasible for even building, those setbacks are what they are in order to get the density in there that you need. So, so yeah, I guess if you're going to work with the vinyl siding, I would try to look at the sign as well if you can, because as little variances that we have to approve, the easier it is to sell to the residents. Coming from a standpoint of somebody representing the residents. So, thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Alderman Guzkowski.
Boy, all of my comments have been brought up. I would point out that the vinyl siding I have a concern about. I think the 48 months, I'm a bit concerned about that. I think overall the building that you presented looks good. I'm concerned about the vinyl mostly, and I think.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner O'Danny.
I actually have a question for Carrie. So we're just voting on the rezoning today?
What the Plan Commission is going to be requesting, what we're requesting is motion for rezoning the property with a planned unit development. The conversations and the direction that the Plan Commission is going to be giving to staff will inform what is included in the conditions and restrictions for the next meeting for consideration. That's why we're having these discussions about what is going to be acceptable for the building materials and by how much. Does the Plan Commission support the height variations? Does the Plan Commission support the setback variations? Because those all have to be incorporated into the conditions and restrictions as part of the PUD for those allowances. And then the Plan Commission will, of course, be requested to, following that plan unit development approval, come back for specific site building, landscaping, lighting plan review. So yes, it's the rezone and the PUD that were being requested with direction to staff for conditions and restrictions.
So we could be sitting here in 2 weeks talking about the vinyl again, correct, with the planning?
Not if the Plan Commission gives clear indication to staff what should be included in the conditions and restrictions.
All right, I would rather discuss it when we usually discuss it. That gives everyone a little more time to, maybe with staff, to discuss any changes. I trust the recommendations and the conditions and restrictions in 2 weeks. So I'm not even going to mention the vinyl. I'm in favor of the rezoning, and hopefully we can maybe have some enlightenment in 2 weeks about the building materials. That's my 2 cents.
The difficulty with that is the staff needs to have direction from the Plan Commission in order to draft those conditions and restrictions for Plan Commission approval and consideration. So if we don't know whether or not the Plan Commission is going to support what's being presented, we can't incorporate that for Plan Commission consideration into the conditions and restrictions.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Motion won't include a specific.
No, the motion will just be for the rezone and PUD, but the direction from the conversation will inform the conditions and restrictions.
That's actually a better explanation. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Fred.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One is for our fire department. Do you see any problem with getting in and out of the area? I look at some of the street patterns, it looks a little tight that you may run into moving some of the fire trucks in and out of the area.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mike Havey, Assistant Chief with Fire. We did review the access routes, and we really don't have any over concerns about our ability to navigate through the paths. So at this point, we are okay with it.
I kind of looked at part of it is where you have parking on both sides of the street, and sometimes that could prevent a little problem of getting through.
Yeah, the public parking is something we don't have, if there's, if they're slotted out for parking stalls, then that's just something we have to deal with.
Right.
But as far as the egress paths around the structures and how it's designed, we don't have too many concerns at this point. It seems to be appropriate for what our needs are.
Well, I'm just looking at, because you're talking roughly 3 stories, that you have to get a ladder truck in. And can you get that fitted in if you had to go to the 3rd story?
What we applied and where we would operate from, there are some limits to what we can do, but that's just part of, some of the developments that we've seen in Oak Creek. We deal with that and have to adjust. But really from our perspective and operationally, this doesn't present too many concerns that we won't be able to deal with.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions at all? As I'm here. Okay.
I do have a question.
For fire?
Yes.
Go right ahead while he's up there, Commissioner Chandler.
So, any challenges with the reduced setbacks or safety or anything?
Nothing that, we see as a challenge at this point.
Thank you.
Sure.
Actually, I do have a question for you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn around.
I'm not really sure if it's for you or for the applicant. So if this is going to be done on several phases, 4 years, how is this going to access? Like, for example, it's still under construction and you have one building already built and the other is not. And the facility, we don't know what kind of a situation it is. If you have like a pile here, you have to maneuver around. Are we going to be able to put this in a way that is going to be accessible?
So, a current example maybe is the roadways are done and our access routes are we're able to navigate through them. That's the important part, is that the water supply is there. Once they start building, that we have sufficient water supply and the roads are there and there's a foundation that we can access through. If that answers your question.
What if the road is not there because it's?
The road would have to be there. That's.
What?
Yeah.
The road, speaking as far as development, we could put that on the development agreement under phase one. And it showed in the depiction that the public road and the private road out to 27th would be constructed under phase one.
That's what I wanted to find out.
Yep. Okay. And that would be handled in the development agreement with Mr. Decker and his group. So we make sure that was in there.
Oh, I have. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
Go now.
I think so. All right.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Fred, you still got the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question from the developer. Why are you looking at one of the buildings to have a metal roof? I noticed that on a couple of the layouts, you've had a metal roof on a couple of the buildings, or one of the buildings, I should say.
Again, if you look at the overall roof mass, we thought this was a nice way to break that up. We thought that this was an improvement over just, vinyl, asphalt shingles everywhere. And again, if folks don't like it, we're happy to put in, a dimensional shingle. We'll get that out. We thought it was an upgrade. It's certainly a more expensive to put in the metal roofing, but we're going to get that out. And I know it wasn't what you asked, but
I don't disagree with you on the metal roof. I just was questioning why you put a metal roof in there on one part of a building, and
we thought it looked pretty.
Just to break it
up.
Yeah,
I guess we have bad taste, but
okay.
We thought it looked pretty.
Thank you.
Aesthetics.
Right.
Okay. The rest of and I agree with Don about the siding. If we open up the Pandora's box, we're going to run into more and more people coming back and asking for it.
I don't know what happened in regards to that, because we did have staff feedback where, that concern was expressed. And I thought we resubmitted fresh drawings, fresh elevations, fresh computations that reflected that we reduced the vinyl to an accent material.
Mr. Decker, you're not on.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I thought we had resubmitted, and it was very last minute, and so I'm not sure what happened.
That's okay. We'll get there in the end.
Right, but I don't think that there's broad disagreement in regards to the vinyl siding. If it's a point that is, people are feeling uncomfortable with, well, my goodness, out it goes.
All right, we'll wrap this all up before the motion, and we'll be clear.
No problem. Thank you. That's it.
That's it. Commissioner Chandler.
Yes, I do have a couple questions. The first question is for Carrie. So the metal roof that is not per code, can it be used or no?
It's not listed in code at all. Standing seam metal roof is not listed as an acceptable building material or roofing material. I will say that there isn't a specific prohibition on metal roofs necessarily, but because it's not listed as an acceptable material, we typically don't see it and we typically don't allow it. We do have specific requirements for roofs in terms of pitch and things like that for single-family residential, oddly enough. And for instance, we wouldn't allow necessarily a completely flat roof in some circumstances. What we questioned initially was there was a significant portion of some of these buildings that had metal roof. And because of that, because it's not specific in the code, we just kind of questioned why there was a little bit of a remnant for these standing seam metal roofs. That was why it was brought up. It's not typically something that we see in residential, at least in Oak Creek. It may be more common elsewhere, but we don't typically see it.
Okay. So I do have a question for the applicant in regards to the metal roof. So based on your comment, it sounds like some changes were made. So what was the the revised plan for the metal roofs?
We were going to put in the same asphalt shingles as you see everywhere else.
And same question in regards to the vinyl siding. So what was the revised plan for the vinyl siding?
I think we were going to use fiber cement board.
No, I think when we resubmitted the plans, we had reduced it all to well below 25% to try to keep it on the buildings, but to fall within that accent material guideline that is within your zoning code. So we were considering it an accent material when we resubmitted and we can hopefully get all that situated before we meet with you again in 2 weeks. If you're okay with the vinyl siding. If you're not okay with it, then we'll take a look at how we address it in the next 2 weeks, based off of whatever you recommend tonight.
And once again, Carrie, the accents, they should be at least or no greater than 25% of the elevation?
That is correct, but vinyl siding is not listed as one of the materials that's approvable in code.
Okay. And then I also have a question for the applicant in regards to the setbacks. So can you provide a little more information on the reduced setbacks?
Sure. So the setbacks came from basically as we worked through this plan over the last three years or so here. We have buildings located on the east side of Orchard Way. We had buildings located on the west side of Orchard Way. That was, and working with the DOT, that needed to become a public road as we extended that through there. And we're set with, we're restricted through the existing wetlands that we have there on the east side, coupled with having to get the stormwater management in there. And also with the south side, really, with the wetland restriction there as well. So that's what leads us to getting a public road through there, I guess, ultimately.
Okay. And then can you also provide a little more information in regards to the sign? Because it also exceeds the code for the sign size.
Correct. So you don't have a sign design right now, right?
No.
I mean, the request is for an upgraded sign because of the, I guess ultimately it would be due to the scale of the property being 24 acres and visible from 27th Street. I think it's as simple as that.
And once again, Carrie, based on the information we have, they exceed the code, correct?
The sign, yes. The sign that we don't have any other information for other than these dimensional requirement or requests, we don't have anything. I will tell you that the Seasons at Orchard Hills, while they did go through a variance process for the sign, they did not ask for a doubling of the sign size, and they're right on 27th Street as well. So staff is not prepared to really comment or recommend an increase in the sign dimensions without at least having some kind of idea of what the sign is going to look like. And I should mention that it doesn't necessarily have to be in the PUD. There is still the sign variance process that can come later.
You know, I'd like to continue to address some of the setback limitations. I think they're all associated with the municipal road that is going through the development. And the way this originally started, there was always a municipal road slated to go through the development. It went more, instead of curving to the west there and then heading north, it kind of went due north. And so working together with the DOT and the planning staff, we kind of came up with something that I think kind of scratched everybody's back in terms of moving the municipal roadway to an area that would allow for an interior road grid to the southeast corner of 27th and Drexel, so that one day people would be able to access the commercial development at the southeast corner of 27th and Drexel without having to go out on 27th Street. In other words, there would be like a back door, if you will, to some of that commercial development. And so we we made a lot of accommodation to make a much, before you had a municipal road going nowhere, it was dead ending into a park. It really had very little value. So we kind of came up with this compromise, certainly in my experience, an accommodation of various parties, including the DOT, to put in this municipal roadway, which, we were led to believe that there might be, since we're kind of accommodating the DOT and some of the goals of the municipality as well, that we would perhaps have some latitude in other areas in terms of how this roadway would lay out with the development.
And one additional question, and this would be for Carrie. So what is this property zoned at today?
The main parcel and the parcel that is on the east are both zoned A1, and the parcel that currently has a single-family residential development on it, it's a smaller piece, that's zoned B4. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you guys did a good job. You pretty much said everything I was going after, from fire to comments were really spot on. You guys really did an excellent job tonight, I think. Very quickly, though, the sign, again, I don't see where it should really be very much different than the Seasons at Orchard Hills or Colonial Woods or whatever else we have going there. We can go through that. The height, I don't have a problem with the extra 6 feet. That doesn't bother me one way or the next. Quite frankly, the roof, I know it's not in our code. It's not in our code because nobody really ever did it 10, 15 years ago, as Carrie said. Back in 08, it's just become a stylish material these days. I guess I don't have a preference one way or another. Aesthetically, it breaks it up. That's strictly based on whatever your taste may be. The setback, the 30-foot versus, what was it, 16 and a half on the corners there?
It varies for 6 of the buildings. The most variation is about a 20-foot reduction, so it would be just over 10 feet from the road.
Which is, somewhat significant, but the road goes in there, the topography, the wetlands, there's just a host of things that play into it. I think it's a decent compromise on that. I don't see where that's an issue. And again, commissioners, if, this is where I'm kind of, if it was just kind of giving suggestions staff-wise going forward, I don't have a problem with the rezoning. It's proper use for this. Just one more thing. Is there an overlay on this property from the 27th Street?
There is not.
Okay. The parking. So, and specifically the parking on what will be Orchard Way, the continuation of Orchard Way. When we did the Seasons at Orchard Hills, man, that is one long title. Anyways, on the back side on Orchard Way, we had parking problems there. And if I'm not mistaken, did we post some of that, Greg?
There's no parking.
So if I could clarify,
Yes.
The public portion of Orchard Way does not have parking on it. It's the private continuation, which is actually going to be named White Oak Way, that continues west to 27th Street, that has the parking on it. So it's all on private.
Okay, so there will be no parking on Orchard Way?
Correct.
Okay. And the reason, go ahead, man.
Sorry.
May I speak with it? It'll be a continuation. So we worked with the developer during the development of their concept. They made many renditions based on comments from engineering. We finally got to the point where we are continuing the same cross-section of roadway all the way north. So it'll be a continuation the same way. So there will be parking allowed on only one side.
Okay.
And it'll be signed no parking on the other side. I believe from where the Colonial Woods private road is, we're going to be switching the parking to the west side to accommodate the larger scale buildings, the A1 and A2s. And then there'd be no parking on the east side of the roadway.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the correction.
And I'm just trying to avoid a problem or a complaint. We didn't realize it, but, Seasons at Orchard Hills, they were parking front ways and back ways and slant ways and all over the place. And you couldn't have got an emergency vehicle there if you tried. And eventually, we did correct it with no parking, but I'm glad to see you're ahead of that. So, phases, 4 years. Man, I am not in favor of a 4-year build out of this project. You just got to look to the south of you. We did phases with no benchmarks at Colonial Woods. And they failed to hit a lot of benchmarks there. And you can see how that project progressed and never finished up. So, I'm in favor of the project. Again, I don't know what the appropriate timeline is, but we will have benchmarks in there. Staff, you will put benchmarks in to hit, or it ain't gonna, we can't have this half-baked, so to speak. So, the siding, hate to keep whipping a dead horse, but I couldn't agree more with Commissioner Carrillo and Seipert. If we do it here, the next one comes through. Where do we stop? And I hear this all the time, and it's a little different topic, but some of the people in the front row hear it all the time. We have ordinances and codes, and then people break them, and we have no recourse to change it or what have you, because it was done wrong in the first place. So if, I get this from the constituents all the time, if you have this stuff on the books, why don't you follow it? So, we really should be consistent with that. And with the siding, again, I also agree with Commissioner Sullivan. If it's an accent, and we can justify it as an accent, Alderman Lark said this, that can be a justification. We have to find that right percentage as to what an accent would be. Like you have it way up in the peaks and things like that. I get it. I guess the other thing, you keep saying this ain't your dad's vinyl. Bring it in here and prove it. Because to me, the vinyl looks like the stuff on my neighbor's house. And that house, believe me, they ain't getting 60 years worth of wear out of their vinyl. So until I see something different, I'm not cool with vinyl. So I'll leave it at that. So that's kind of the direction, at least. Now, did I say anything? Anybody want to add to the direction as staff goes? Because as Carrie pointed out, this is a rezone, but they're going to need direction to work with the applicant to come forward. So will you see vinyl again? Maybe as an accent, maybe as a percentage. That's the direction they're looking for staff. That's what we're here for tonight. Did I sum that up well? You guys okay with that? Okay. Told you, this is a good group. I'm telling you. Make my job easy. So if there's anything you'd like to add, otherwise, I think I kind of spit out most of what I heard. I tried to bring it all together.
Okay, can you summarize all our comments so we can, in a way?
So what I heard very clearly from the mayor is that the conditions and restrictions must have very clearly spelled out benchmarks for the phasing plan. That will be incorporated. As far as the siding is concerned, we don't have a specific accent requirement because vinyl is not allowed in code. So if the Plan Commission is looking to make an exception, and this would be a deviation, it would be a deviation beyond what's in the code. In other words, the code builds in a 3/4 majority approval for fiber cement.
Correct. And just very quickly, remember LP siding? That came up with the vet thing. Remember, none of us had it. It wasn't in the code. That's becoming a common use material as things progress, and we're just not there or haven't seen it or even approved it. So it's not to say the vinyl couldn't fly, but something we got to look at, and staff really has to evaluate.
Yes, and again, staff is going by code, so staff's recommendation is going to be no vinyl. But if the Plan Commission wants to consider something else, we do need to have what is going to be an acceptable amount. Unfortunately, we can't tell you what 25% looks like for an accent material until we see it. So it could be 25%, spread out, and it has to be no more than 25% on each elevation. So it's not a 25% overall kind of situation. So 65% brick masonry decorative glass per elevation. You want your accent materials to be no more than 25% of each elevation. If the Plan Commission is not comfortable with 25%, because that could be a significant amount based on the information that we've received. We do need that direction. But again, I can't tell you what 25 versus 10% looks like until I see it. The other things that I heard, it doesn't seem like there's really a consensus on whether or not the metal roofs are going to be concerning for the Plan Commission, or whether the commission prefers to have the shingles. Again, the code is kind of silent on it, but we've not seen it before. We've not approved it on any multifamily residential buildings that I can recall.
But commercial buildings will have it.
Well, we have had some commercial buildings that have had metal roof.
Probably Water Street.
Yes.
Probably our clock tower. So.
But multifamily residential, I cannot recall that there have been metal roofs.
I
that have been
would agree
approved.
with you. I think that's something new.
I could be wrong, but I don't recall anything in recent approvals that incorporate metal roofs into residential.
Right.
So that would be something that we would be looking for in terms of Plan Commission direction. If there's any concern with the 48 months, we would look for what would be an acceptable time frame. But if it's 48 months that we're going to be working within and just attaching benchmarks to that, that would be just a point of clarification that I would like. What I'm also hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we are going to be treating the monument sign separately once we have more information on it. So we're not going to be incorporating that into the variations for the conditions and restrictions. There is an alternate process that we can go through. But that's what I heard from the Plan Commission, is that we're not going to be including that in the conditions and restrictions.
Correct.
Okay.
As far as the 4-year plan goes, and again, I don't want to speak for the applicant. They have a reason for their 48 months, whether it's cash flow, whatever it might be, financing, the whole deal. Sorry if I'm not on. I do think the benchmarks are important. I would like to see a speedier build. This is, it's multiple buildings, multiple phases, but we have had people come through Town Square and other places and built similar size places, maybe less buildings, maybe more, and the build outs have been less than 4. So I guess that's something you guys can talk to them about and get more in detail offline.
If the Plan Commission is fine with 48 months, we can work within 48 months.
Could I make a suggestion here?
Sure.
So for the work I do for 48 months, we set up an early date, like some of the milestone of the schedule. So we call it advanceable date. So we can have an advanceable date that part of the benchmarks. They need to meet it, let's say 2.5 years, 2 years, whatever we agreed upon. And then the 4 years are there just in case if they have hiccups or something happens. So we can move forward with that.
Typically what we do is we go by phase. We give them an amount of time per phase where they have to get building permits and occupancy permits before they can go to the next phase. And then they have to complete the next phase and get the building permits and occupancy permits within a certain time. So that was the initial thought based on how we've done it previously, which incorporates exactly what you're saying. So that was the thought process moving forward. If there are going to be additional benchmarks, we can consider those as well. But usually it's time to get a building permit, time to get an occupancy permit, and then keep going with that phase. We can even get a little bit more detailed about specifics within the phases, but that's something that we would have to consider. At least we have the base for the benchmarks to be the timeframes for those 2 triggering mechanisms. The final things that I heard from the Plan Commission, nobody seems to have too much concern about the reductions to the setbacks for the road. And I did not hear too many concerns for the exception to the height for any of the buildings, including the clubhouse. So if that's the case, what we would be focusing on are, again, the benchmarks and the siding, and just allowing for those deviations to be incorporated into the conditions and restrictions, and no sign.
Quick question. In regards to the benchmarks, if they're not met, let's say the first one, then what does the applicant have to do, or what are the next steps?
We'd have to talk about that, whether that's a reconsideration, kind of an amendment to the plan unit development, or if we're going to have certain phraseology within the benchmark itself where you can have sub-requirements. We've not necessarily had too many problems with people completing phases within the timeframes. Really what ends up happening is they don't start by the required time, and then they have to come back and ask for an extension of the time.
So it wouldn't stop progress. They would just have to take some additional steps to continue?
Yeah, and whether that's coming back to the Plan Commission and Common Council for additional time or what have you. There's always the amendment process.
And then normally, what is that time frame? 36?
No, what we have seen with previous PUDs is 18 to 36 months.
18 to 36, okay.
And we've usually seen it in 2 phases. That's not to say that that's always the case, but that's just what we've seen.
Great. Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
Oh, wait, I do have an additional question in regards to the vinyl siding for the applicant. So what would be the other options besides vinyl that you could potentially use?
I think it would be cement board siding.
And then Carrie, so the cement board, that would just need the majority?
I would need a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission at plan review.
Okay.
So not at rezone PUD, but the next review.
And would that be in the material, would that be identified in the conditions?
That's actually per code.
Per code, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else before we go to motion?
Oh, we need to kind of change that motion a little bit to reflect what we have discussed, or?
No, the motion is just for rezoning with the plan unit development. The conditions and restrictions.
For staff direction.
I was just gonna say, so did you get direction, or do we need any more?
Oh, I got it. So you, clear benchmarks. We want the siding to be addressed. No sign incorporated. The deviations for the height and the setbacks are okay.
Okay, Hannah moved that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the properties at 8100 and 8146 South 27th Street and 8100 South Orchard Way to be rezoned to RM1, multifamily residential, with a planned unit development after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restriction that will be prepared for the Commission's review at their next meeting, July 27 of 2021.
Oracle second.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Carrillo.
Carrillo, aye.
Warwick, aye.
Bukevich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Haldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Okay. Great, guys. Continue to work with staff, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks, right? So, perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Item 8B, review of certified survey map submitted by Scott Satula, Mini Rentals, Inc., dividing the properties at 400 East Oak Street. Carrie, will you start us out and then introduce us to Jack when you get a chance?
Plan Commissioners, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Jack Kopneski, who is our Community Development Intern, who will be presenting tonight's item on the certified survey map. Jack, would you please?
Hi, it's nice to meet you all. This is a proposed certified survey map of 400 East Oak Street to divide the properties into 2 lots. Lot 1 will be about 6.4 acres. Lot 2 will be about 4 acres. The proposed lots are conforming to the M1 manufacturing zoning district, and the applicant intends to divide the properties for the purpose of marketing the currently vacant Lot 2. At this time, there are no developments in place proposed for Lot 2. Furthermore, after the proposed division, Lot 1 will have an impervious surface coverage of 64% because there are buildings that occupy Lot 1. And any future development on lot 1 will have to abide by code and allow for a minimum of 30% open space.
Will it be on either lot or lot 1? Because lot 1's pretty much stuck where they're at, right? For the 30%, are we talking either lot or lot 1?
Well, at this time, there are no proposals for lot 1 or 2. This is just to divide the properties into 2.
Okay. Should we go right to commission with questions? Anybody have any questions? It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Letting Jack off the hook way too easy here. Yeah. So Jack, are there any negatives to the city doing this?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Seeing none and no questions, we'll look for a motion on 8B, please.
Seeker moves that the planning commission recommends to the common council that the certified survey map submitted by Mini Rentals Incorporated for the property at 400 East Oak Street be approved with the following conditions. That all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate, geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Aldani seconds.
Roll call, starting with Alderman Lorik.
Lorik, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Sullivan, aye.
Bill, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. That gets us to 8C, and that's a plan review. Site plan submitted by Robert Coleman, Oak Creek Commercial Properties LLC for an expansion of a parking lot and paved areas in the property at 7725 South 6th Street. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property was actually approved for a building expansion back in March of 2020. However, that approved plan did not incorporate the pavement and parking expansion that we're here to discuss tonight. The current zoning is M1, and the proposal again for the expansion of the asphalt and parking areas on the screen right now is the site plan that was approved in March 2020. You may not recognize this. This was right at the beginning of the pandemic. This went through a staff review, and there was an executive decision made that this was of such a minor alteration that it could be approved at staff level given the circumstance. So that proposed building is on the west side of the existing building, and the only asphalt paving that had been indicated on this plan was the extension of the drive to access the building. What they are proposing to do as part of a paving project for their property is to redo some of the parking stalls, but then add 16 stalls to accommodate the new construction. The asphalt driveway is also being pushed out slightly. So that's reflected on the north side. And if I zoom in here, you can get an idea of exactly what we're talking about. So while those 21 parking stalls on the northeast corner are existing and they're just going to be repaved, essentially, with a little bit of exception, everything from those parking stalls west is new. What they're also proposing to do is remove some of the existing pavement. That's indicated by the pink hatch mark there. That will be replaced with topsoil, seed, and mulch to reestablish vegetation there. They are also proposing a green infrastructure component to this that was required to be incorporated with the building addition. They are still working with our engineering department to ensure that local and MMSD requirements are met for those green infrastructure rules. And then on the south, they are also removing some existing pavement so that they meet their 30% open space requirement. The asphalt that is on the south currently looks like it may have been bumped out over the years, getting a little bit closer than that 5-foot setback for landscaping. But since it's been there since probably at least the 90s, staff have no concerns with that at this time. There are no additional landscape plans because, again, this is a repaving project. And as far as green infrastructure is required, continue to work with staff to ensure that that permit gets approved, and we have no concerns about that moving forward. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Are there any questions from council? Starting from my right, Commissioner Chandler, anything?
No questions.
Fred?
No comment.
Don?
No questions.
Chris? No. Greg? Dawn?
No.
Matt?
None.
Christine?
Nope.
None from me either. So, motion, please. Pretty straightforward.
Clark moves that the Plan Commission approve site and building plans submitted by Robert Coleman, Oak Creek Commercial Properties LLC for the property at 7725 South 6th Street with the following conditions. Number one, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. And number two, that the plans are revised to incorporate all green infrastructure areas, landscaping, lighting, if applicable, and setbacks. And three, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, and I will start. Aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chamber, aye.
And I.
Sullivan, aye.
Bill, aye.
Clark, aye.
And that brings us to 8D, and that is a review site, landscape, lighting, and related plans submitted by Jeff Schaefer for Stella and Chewy's for an outdoor patio dining area on the property at 111 West Oakview Parkway. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is pretty straightforward. The caveat to this is that we've seen outdoor dining permits that have been requested for restaurants, but not necessarily for a business for their employees. So it's a little bit interesting of a situation here, but not necessarily anything that's entirely uncommon. They're going to be eliminating 15 parking stalls on the north. That's just immediately north of where the entrance to their kind of break room and conference area is. And then this is going to be enclosed on three sides by a 36-inch tall cable railing, and we'll talk about that in a moment. In the red box is the location of where they're going to be pouring this patio area, and you can see from the inset here that it will be going right up to the building, so it will be at grade, and there will be curb and gutter that is added to it. The left-hand side planter island that was kind of delineating where the parking stalls were to end, that's going to be expanded a little bit just so that it's all flush. And access is going to be either through the building, through the existing doors to access the area. And there's two portions where there's kind of a break in the fence before you get to the building that allows you to exit on either side. No additional lighting is proposed for this. They have submitted some photometric and lighting details saying that the existing lighting on the building itself will provide sufficient illumination for employees to be out there. They're not anticipating that people are going to be out there all hours of the day anyway. It's mostly for your daytime usage. The proposed railing that's about 36 inches tall that will surround this area on three sides except for the gaps to get in and out looks a little bit like what's in the example photo for this home. And if you've been inside City Hall, you've kind of seen pretty much what that looks like. If you go up the stairs to the second floor, you can see kind of the cable rail type fencing. And with that, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Carrie. We'll open it up to questions. Starting Commissioner Hanna, anything?
Yes, actually, I'm not sure I'm 100% understanding. So they want to add like an outdoor seating area for employees?
Yes, that's correct.
And how is this going to be protected from the parking that people may just back off? Or did you have anything except those rails out there?
Yes, it's actually going to be poured concrete, so it's going to be elevated up, and there's going to be 18-inch curb and gutter. So it'll act as if it's at the same level as the building, as the sidewalk. Okay. So they bump into the curb first, and those drive aisles are wide enough because those used to be parking stalls. So that's at least 20 to 24 feet in between the edge of the parking stall and where this will be.
I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Matt?
I have no concerns. Thank you.
Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Greg?
No questions, thanks.
Chris?
No questions.
Don?
No questions.
Fred?
No question.
Chaucer?
I do have a question just for clarity. Can you please repeat the safety measures that will be used? Is the applicant here?
So actually what they're doing is they're going to be, they're pouring concrete to meet the level of the entry elevation for the building. And that they will also be incorporating an 18-inch curb and gutter on the exterior of this. So it'll act as if it's just kind of like a sidewalk, essentially. So it's off the drive aisle, and it'll be protected by that curb and gutter. And then the railing goes along the exterior perimeter of it.
So the place where the employees go, everything will be raised 18 inches or just the curb?
It'll be at level with the building. So that will be up from where the vehicles are driving. It'll be raised up.
Okay, and once again, what's keeping the employees safe? They cannot go over this 18-inch curb? Am I understanding that correctly?
No, it's basically like raising the existing parking stalls up to sidewalk grade. So it'll be raising it about that 18-inch curb and gutter height. And then the railing goes along the perimeter of it. So there's a visual barrier. There's the steel beams that'll be holding that cable, plus the curb. So people would be bumping into the curb before anything else. And it's enclosed with this railing.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I have nothing. Great amenity for the employees. I think it really says a lot about the company when they put something out there for them. So, and well done. Much better than that rope thing we had at the other place. Anyways, with that being said, if there's no further questions, motion.
Well, Donnie moves that the Plan Commission approve site and building plans submitted by Jeff Schaefer, Stella and Chewy's for the property at 111 West Oakview Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call, starting with you, Chris.
Guzikowski, aye.
Donnie, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chamber, aye. And aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Willow, aye.
Laura, aye. David, aye. And before we adjourn, as always, I want to thank staff. Good job. You know, not short agenda, but a lot going on there in a little package. So thank you, Jack. Nice job, man. Nailed your first assignment. Cool. And for you guys and ladies on the commission, nice job tonight. Honestly, very good. Great discussion. So before we adjourn, Dawn, you want a couple minutes for the market?
I don't need a couple minutes, but a couple words. We are giving, the health department is giving vaccines at the market this week. So that's kind of a new twist on it. So if anybody needs a vaccine, you can come in and get the Johnson & Johnson or the Pfizer at the market. And next weekend is Dog Days.
Yep, and the market will be going on. And keep in mind, it's that time of year when all the gardening I did, I throw in the garbage can and go to the farmer's market. So, with that, motion to adjourn.
Quillo moves to adjourn at 7:29.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, starting with you, Don.
Donnie, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chamber, aye. And aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Quillo, aye.
Laura, aye. David, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
That'll do it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Don.